Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I am here with Paul Sutcliffe and Eric the Kafir, a very strange surname for an American, but and Eric the Kafir, and yeah, they were both very kind enough to join me at the last minute. I thought, you know what, I need two very educated men, and they both qualify, especially Dr. Paul Sutcliffe, as I've.
Well, Eric is a doctor too. Eric has the PhD.
I have a
Oh my,
theology,
and
all things.
well, that's okay. So see, so there you go. You guys are knowledgeable in theology, and you're both American. So you're both qualified Americans and highly educated men. And we're talking about America, the the forgotten history of the Christian founding of America. So this is my fourth episode. I've been doing a very detailed analysis of the arguments against the Christian founding, which was made by secularists, by atheists, by socialists, by people who obviously want to undermine the West, and looking at the words, the statements, the actions of the founding fathers, and just how Christian they are. And we want to continue this. I want to deal with one issue, which is the Tripoli Treaty, which someone raised last week. So I thought, you know what, let me dive into that. We're going to look at that, and we'll look at the constitutions of the 50 states, and we'll see if these have nothing to do with Christianity. So welcome, guys. Thanks for joining me. How are you doing, Eric?
I'm great. I'm retired now. No stress in my life. Unlike Paul. I'm sorry. I don't mean to rub it in, Paul, but I'm just going to tell you, after you retired, there's just no stress. I mean, it's really nice.
I did just say I was stupid. That's my only answer to that.
Right. So yeah, so thanks guys. And Paul may be interrupted, he may be called away. But yeah, thanks for joining me, guys. And I see the Dashing Rogue. Welcome, Lilo Main. Always great to have you. And DXX on X. We are broadcasting live on Twitter, X, YouTube, and on Rumble. And by the way, guys, for those of you who are members of the channel, I have released 5 slideshows, which I've sent a message on the community tab. Please find the link there to download 5 slideshows that I've made available to you. And also, for those who want, this particular slideshow, the first 99 slides are available. It's pinned in the chat, and it's $2.50, which I'll increase the price later, but right now, $2.50 for the first 99 slides of this particular presentation, which you can get. So yeah, let's dive into this one. Well, this is called One Nation Under God, America, a Christian Nation. And I think we can make a powerful argument to demonstrate that, yes, America is founded on Christian principles. Any comment from you guys before we begin, Eric or Paul?
Well, a lot of these principles that you have been discussing in your previous videos, I haven't seen the entirety of all of them. We do discuss in our classrooms, or at least in the classroom because I taught American history for 17 years, early American history for 17 years. And a lot of the facts and about the founding of our country, about the men who founded our country, I personally taught. The problem is that the states, when we go to educate our children, don't include a lot of those items in the standards, and we're supposed to teach standards to the students. And if you're not including those in the standards themselves, you therefore are allowing teachers just to skip right over them. So they're in our country, and this is my personal opinion, there needs to be a bigger push to re-establish the facts of who our founding fathers were, their Christian beliefs, and how that is incorporated and found not only in our Constitution and in the Bill of Rights, but also throughout all of the case law that has been rendered since then.
And I think I covered some of that law last week, where the American law is explicitly based on Christian principles. And obviously this has caused a little bit of controversy, but I want to make a definitive series that Americans can refer to and to defend the fact that America is a Christian nation.
Well, you're doing great.
Okay, so we ended on a quote by Thomas Jefferson last week. I'd just like to return to that quote, just the one slide, and then we'll move on to the new topics. This is from the Jefferson website, the Monticello. This is where he was buried. And the quote was something like, "No nation has ever yet existed or been governed without religion." Now, on the website, it says, curious quotation. And, "Sir, no nation has ever yet existed or been governed without religion, nor can be. The Christian religion is the best religion that has been given to man. And I, as chief magistrate of this nation, am bound to give it the sanction of my example." Now, this is a story that is very much in keeping with the fact that Jefferson was known to religiously, to coin a phrase, attend services every Sunday. He would not miss services, and he was also attending services in the state capital. Now, I thought I should actually cover this because some people are probably going to try and attack this and say, "Hey, hold on, but that quote is not 100% true." But then again, we'll also start disassembling their arguments and show how those arguments are not exactly 100% true either. But this is on the Monticello website. And this quotation first appeared in a handwritten manuscript by the Reverend Ethan Allen. And the story was related to Allen by Mr. Ingle, who claimed to have been told the story that Jefferson was walking to church services one Sunday with his large red prayer book under his arm when a friend, querying him after their mutual good morning, said, "Which way are you walking, Mr. Jefferson?" To which he replied, "To church, sir." "You going to church, Mr. J? You do not believe a word in it." "Sir," said Mr. J, "no nation has ever yet existed or been governed without religion, nor can be." So the context here, I may have made one or two typos. That's always the case with my slides. But the context is Ethan Allen is someone that he knew. I've mentioned Ethan Allen before. They collaborated together within the church. And so there's no reason for this person to tell a lie. However, the story is very much in context and in keeping with the known habits of and statements of Thomas Jefferson. Any thoughts from you guys before I go on?
I would say that Jefferson, when he was walking to church, he was probably walking to our nation's capital itself, because this is where the president at that time went to church. They held church. They had actually had church in our nation's capital. Little known fact.
Yes. Yeah, up to 2,000 people would fill the Capitol building to have services on Sundays, which is incredible. So this is J.P. Ingle, note, from 1857, quoted in Allen's manuscript. So, and this is in the Library of Congress, right? It's also quoted in other sources, but you guys can always check that in the notes here on the screen. So let's move to the next topic. So the first portion of this, we'll talk about the Treaty of Tripoli, which people seem to cite as the definitive refutation of any Christian aspect of the American state. Of course, why a treaty of surrender of Libya in the 1700s would somehow be where the United States government declares its particular affiliation with Christianity is beyond me, but let's have a look at that. So let's look at the Treaty of Paris in 1783. Here is the original, it's a duplicate. "In the name of the most holy and undivided Trinity." So, of course, the people who signed, the Americans who signed the Treaty of Paris, did not get the memo from the Treaty of Tripoli that there's nothing Christian about America. So, signed on September 3, 1783, between the American colonies and Great Britain, it ended the American Revolution and formally recognized the United States as an independent nation. The American War for Independence was a world conflict. It involved the United States, Great Britain, France, Spain, and the Netherlands. The three American negotiators, John Adams, Benjamin Franklin, and John Jay, achieved many of the objectives sought by the new United States. So, John Adams, famous name, second president of the United States, I believe, right, Eric? Benjamin Franklin, I've heard of him. He sounds familiar. And John Jay, apparently also quite popular and famous. And yeah, so these are heavyweights within as far as American founding fathers go. The last page bears the signatures of David Hartley, who represented Great Britain, and the three American negotiators who signed their names in alphabetical order. And the transcript, right, it's called the Definitive Treaty of Peace, 1783, "in the name of the most holy and undivided Trinity. It having pleased the divine providence," this was Jefferson and even George Washington's favorite name. In fact, it was almost the most common name for God amongst the founding fathers, Providence. Providence being the belief that God takes an interest in the world and guides the world because God has a plan for the world. So therefore, these are not deists because they're speaking of providence. Done at Paris, this 3rd day of September in the year of our Lord. So your thoughts, guys, on this?
Our Constitution is similarly signed. You know, when they say there's no Christianity, there's no religious beliefs found in, or Christian beliefs found in the Constitution. And it's right there. And, you know, if you can say, okay, well, it's right there at the very end. It says, was it 1788, 787 when they signed the Constitution, in the year of our Lord, 1787. So you find the same thing there.
Right. Yeah. So I raised this Treaty of Paris because you've got these three very, very well-known names: John Adams, Benjamin Franklin, and John Jay. Most known and associated with the Federalist Papers. So let's continue. So now, the Muslim or the Barbary pirates attacked America. 1801. Tripoli formally declares war against the United States. We would know it today as Libya. This was America's first official war as an established independent nation. The Barbary powers, called the Barbary Pirates by most Americans, attacked American merchant ships, but oddly enough, not naval ships, wherever they found them. President Washington dispatched envoys to negotiate terms with those Muslim nations. They reached several treaties of what they called peace and amity with the Muslim Barbary powers to ensure protection of American commercial ships sailing in the Mediterranean. But America had no navy and no naval force they could project, so no threat of any power against the Muslims, so the terms of the treaties were always unfavorable for America. So one line from this treaty is the most frequently invoked and the most heavily relied upon by critics, as we saw during last week's broadcast, in their attempt to disprove what history overwhelmingly documents. Asserting that America never was a Christian nation, they invoke a clause from Article 11 of the 1797 Treaty of Tripoli that declared, "The government of the United States is in no sense founded on the Christian religion." Now do note, these are 18 words out of an 81-word sentence, and this is 18 words out of a 4-page document. Any comment you guys want to make before I continue?
Of course.
This is a concession made to get the Muslims to sign, and that's basically what it is.
Yep, there's a context behind it. Eric, any comment from you before I continue?
Are you going to show the text of?
Yeah, we're going to go into that.
Two things. Number one, if you notice that they did not attack naval ships, it's just merchant ships they would attack.
Yeah.
I would say this is very similar to what we see in the October 7th attacks on Israel. They always pick the softest target and people who are weak and not able to defend themselves. This is, I don't want to say it has always happened in the Islamic tradition, but this is what normally happens. The second thing is that the reason why they're attacking our ships is our ship. It wasn't just the Barbary pirates who, I don't know if you're going to cover this, but it just wasn't the Barbary pirates that was going after our merchant ships. It was also included the countries of France and England. As a matter of fact, with France, we had this huge deal called the XYZ affair, where the French were stealing the ship, stealing the cargo, and then taking the sailors and selling them off as slaves. The same thing with the British. The British were stealing the ships, stealing the cargo, and then re-impressing those sailors who they claimed were former British citizens into their navy, into the the King's Navy, in order to attack us. So the United States at this time was very weak militarily, and it was because we just didn't. Our government, we were only 83 was the Treaty of Paris, but the war ended in 81, so we're only 20 years old here. But there's more to come. Sorry.
Right. So now do note this partial quote is one assertion that is contradicted by thousands of pieces of evidence that say the opposite. Now, the words that you read here are in the English translation of the contract. Something to bear in mind, the words do not appear in the original Arabic contract. The words are only in the English version, not in the Arabic. So the full paragraph. Yes, Catherine, you didn't yet have a navy, but but very soon one is formed.
We had a Navy, but it was pretty much disbanded, and the Navy was temporary. And we didn't want to finance the Navy as a regular thing at that point. So we had a few ships, but a Navy is much more than, even after, we only had, 9 frigates when we went over to fight the Barbary pirates.
Right.
And we won.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's look at the full paragraph. As the government of the United States of America is not, in any sense, founded on the Christian religion, as it has in itself no character of enmity against the laws, religion, or tranquility of Muslims, and as the said states, America, have never entered into any war or act of hostility against any Mohammedan nation, it is declared by the parties that no pretext arising from religious opinions shall ever produce an interruption of the harmony existing between the two countries. Now, the context here is that the government of the United States is not a Christian theocracy. To be a theocracy, you must have a religion of law. Now, Islam has the Sharia. It is a civil legal system. So Islam can be a theocracy because it has an entire religious legal system. It can be a theocracy. There is no such legal system in Christianity. And the US government is not a theocracy thus, and therefore cannot have any enmity against another nation. But the Muslims, they saw it from their perspective. They saw a Christian nation, and the government is stating, no, we do not have a theocratic government that has any kind of feelings of harm towards you. So while the founders identified America as a Christian nation, they specifically prohibited a federal state religion in the Constitution. Thus, Article 11, declaration that the US was not a theocratic state, unlike these Islamic nations, does not contradict America's Christian cultural identity, nor the fact that Christian principles informed the creation of the documents like the Constitution, the Declaration of Independence, the constitutions of the states, and was very much the religion that was the fabric that constituted the fabric of the United States and its founders. So the history of the Treaty of Tripoli, along with treaties negotiated before and after it, and the context of the conflict, will underscore the Christian nation of the USA, which we will see as we go. Any comments from you guys before we go on that paragraph above? This is from the English version, of course.
Well, I find it semi-amusing how politically incorrect they were when they called them the tranquility of Muslimin, Mohammedan. You would get, CNN would have a ball with you today if you tried that. But this type of attack on Christianity and the founding fathers and the foundations, Christian foundations that we find, is atypical. And you covered it. Am I correct? You covered it in the previous video with Jefferson and his Bible. You talked about that. Okay, this is just, and it's a lie that is perpetuated in the popular media.
It's incredible how blatantly false that is, and how it's perpetuated when it runs contrary to the facts. But it shows that a lie can really persist,
and it permeates our classrooms also, because teachers are taught this in colleges, and colleges are like these liberal bastions of hell when it comes to Christianity. They're attacked all the time. Here's a great case in point. In one of the textbooks that it was teaching world history, and it was talking about the 5 major religions, and right there in the textbook, a textbook in the year, I think it was dated like 2009, 2010, whatever year it was, said that Islam was spread through economic and trade diffusion. Yes.
That's
United States
yeah.
So when we start talking about these lies that are told about not only Christianity, but it's also told
in New York State, there used to be a question on the Regents exam every year. Islam spread through cultural diffusion is what they use.
Yeah.
And if you didn't pick that as an answer, you missed that part of the test.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Right. Okay. So that's a false story. That's a false narrative, if ever there was one. So now by 1800, extortion payments to the literally Muslim terrorists accounted for 20% of the federal budget. Thomas Jefferson, who was president in 1801, refused further payments and decided to take military action to end the 20 years of Muslim jihad. Now, General William Eaton, who was appointed as consul to Tunis by John Adams in 1799, was elevated to U.S. naval agent to the Barbary States, and he was appointed to lead a military expedition against Tripoli. So using the new American Navy to transport the U.S. Marines, Eaton successfully campaigned to free captured American sailors and others, and he crushed the Muslim forces. Let's have a look at this book called The Life of the Late General William Eaton. Now remember, we saw here that is not in any sense founded on the Christian religion. We had someone come on the chat last week and bleat about that like a little sheep. Now it says here, General William Eaton, several years an officer in the United States Army, consul at the Regency of Tunis on the coast of Barbary, and commander of the Christian forces. So for a state and an army that has nothing to do with Christianity, it's crazy. You've got here an officer that is commander of the Christian forces that marched from Egypt through the desert of Barca and conquered the city of, which led to the Treaty of Peace between the United States and the Regency of Tripoli. So, yeah, your thoughts on that? That you had this man leading the Christian forces.
Is this a biography you said?
Yes. Yeah, that's his official biography, yeah.
I did not know. That's very interesting.
Yeah, that's why I make the big money on YouTube, because I do all this thorough, fantastic research.
My wife always accuses me of, you had like 4,600,923 facts that are completely irrelevant to the lives of people running through your head, Eric. You need to get a life and start.
Yeah, we wouldn't need jobs if we were doing great on YouTube.
Really care.
Okay, so anyway, so that's General William Eaton, the commander of the Christian forces. So yeah, definitely. Now, guys, I have a question for you. Would it be written in his biography, which is taken from his notes, that he was commander of the Christian forces if he was an atheist?
Say that one more time.
I mean,
he would not be commander of the Christian forces if he was an atheist. He would not claim that.
Exactly. So let's have a look. So Eaton, when writing to President Adams' Secretary of State, Timothy Pickering, apprised him of why the Muslims would be dedicated foes. He writes, taught by revelation that war with the Christians will guarantee the salvation of their souls, and finding so great secular advantages in the observance of this religious duty, i.e. the secular advantage of keeping captured cargoes, the Muslims' inducements to desperate fighting are powerful. So clearly they've got here an economic motive, as you were saying, Eric. They've got a very powerful economic motive. But they are fighting the Christians. So, of course, the Muslims are saying, hold on, that's a Christian nation. And the Americans sign a treaty to say, hold on, guys, wait. So that leads back to what I said just a moment ago. The government is saying, we're not a theocratic government. We are not at war with you. Why are you at war with us? We are not a Christian government in the sense that we did not establish a theocracy. So therefore, why is there enmity? We have no enmity with you. So that was all that the statement is about. Eaton explained why the Muslims found American targets so inviting. For example, when the American cargo ship Hero arrived in Tunis, the Muslims immediately noted that the heavy-laden ship was protected by only 2 tiny 4-pound cannons. According to Eaton, the weak, the crazy situation of the vessel, and armaments tended to confirm an opinion long since conceived and never fairly controverted among the Tunisians that the Americans are a feeble sect of Christians. And he said, to speak truly and candidly, we must acknowledge to you that we have never received articles of the kind of so excellent a quality from any Christian nation. They loved the plunder, in other words. When Eaton finally commenced his military action against Tripoli at Jefferson's order, his personal journal noted, April 8th, we find it almost impossible to inspire these wild bigots with confidence in us or to persuade them that being Christians, we can be otherwise than enemies to Muslims. We have a difficult undertaking. And he's saying here, as Christians, somehow they don't understand that as Christians, we are happy to be at peace with them. Now, why would this guy who doesn't know about the fact that America is not a Christian nation, why is he insisting that we are Christians and we are, we are leading Christian forces in a Christian army? Any thoughts from you guys before I move on?
No, I'm fine here.
Yeah. So, the life of the late General William Eaton, commander of the Christian and other forces, as I mentioned, which led to the Treaty of Peace. So that's the title of his biography. So does this reinforce for you guys that there's clearly a Christian element to and Christian understanding of the nature of the U.S. state at the time? And that any thought on that?
There's a gentleman in Texas. Barton is his last name. I cannot remember.
Historian Barton. Yes, I know. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, he has a website called Wall Builders.
I've mentioned it here.
Oh, okay, all right.
I told people to have a look at it.
It's a great website, and he also does a video series, as a matter of fact, on the Christian principles that we find in the founding of our nation. I don't know if it's online or not, but I have the series in a DVD format. I've had it obviously I've had quite a while if it's in DVD format, but that website itself is just a wealth of information for people to go to.
Right. Yeah. Okay, so now the treaty with Tripoli. So remember last week we had someone come in the chat and they were quoting those 18 words from the Treaty of Tripoli, and they wanted to imply or assert something. So let's have a look. Let's do a deep dive into this Treaty of Tripoli. So this is 1796 apparently, and the Barbary treaties from 1786 to 1816, the annotated translation of 1930 by a well-known scholar whom I've actually referenced in the past on other topics called Christian Snoek Gronier. And what does he tell us? The treaty is often cited in discussions regarding the role of religion in the United States government due to a clause in Article 11 of the English language translation that was ratified by the Senate. Now, of course, the assertion is that the Senate ratified that particular paragraph. No, they ratified the peace treaty on U.S. terms that the Barbary pirates would stop attacking the U.S. That's what was ratified. And it was signed by the president, which states the government of the United States of America is not in any sense founded on the Christian religion. So we've dealt with that. However, modern translations of the official Arabic text of the treaty confirm that no such phrase exists.
Oh.
The 11th article of the Barlow translation has no equivalent whatever in the Arabic. That's a quote by Christian Snoek Gronier. He says the Arabic text opposite that article is a letter. So Article 11 in the Arabic is a letter from Hassan Pasha of Algiers to Yusuf Pasha of Tripoli. The letter gives notice of the Treaty of Peace concluded with the Americans and recommends its observation. In other words, follow the treaty, we've signed it. 3/4 of the letter consists of an introduction drawn up by, his words, a stupid secretary who just knew a certain number of bombastic words and expressions occurring in solemn documents, but entirely failed to catch their real meaning. Here, the only thing to be done by a translator is to try to give the reader an impression of the nonsensical original. Any comment or thoughts on that? And Philip, I believe we've answered your question. Any comment before I continue, guys?
What you're saying, they're saying that the guy that translated the treaty that was signed by the parties, when he translated, was barely literate in Arabic.
No,
Is that
He
what
was
said?
literate in Arabic. We're going to talk about him. We're going to do a deep dive onto Mr.
Okay,
Joel
all right.
Barlow.
Because he says that the
No, he's speaking here of the
bombastic words. Yeah. Okay, go ahead.
yeah. No, he's speaking here of drawn up by yeah. Well, we're gonna have a look at this. Yeah, there's something weird with this. There's something strange about this treaty. Something strange about these circumstances. Let's look at the Arabic clause 11. But yeah, I mean, this is something worth considering, Eric. We can always chat about this and then re-examine this. It's worth coming back to some of this stuff because there's more to be done. I just don't want to, spend hours on little details necessarily, but it's definitely worth re-examining. Okay, so let's go to see what clause 11 says in the Arabic as opposed to the English. Praise be to Allah who inspires the minds of rulers with causes of well-being and righteousness. Does that sound anything like clause 11 in the English?
I'm looking at it right now, and I do not see any praises given.
Absolutely not.
The present matter. Yeah, exactly. The present matter may be in the interest of the land and the servants of God, of Allah, in order that things may be put in their place. This whole affair has been opened. And the translator, Snooker Grenier, writes, by omission of one letter, the Arabic reads victories instead of opened. So there could have been a mistake made here. So this whole affair has been opened by the intermediary of the exalted honored prince, the Lord Hassan Pasha, in the protected by Rod, Algiers. May Allah strengthen him and give him victory and help him in accomplishing good things. Thus in the beginning and in the end, and may the acquiescence in his order take place by considering all his affairs, and may his endeavor repose on the fitness of his reflection. So may Allah make it, the beginning of this peace, a good and graceful measure and an introduction having for result exaltation and glorification out of love for our brother and friend and our most beloved, the exalted Lord Yusuf Pasha. And the translator states, here follows the same word as in Article 10, al-munshi, residing or governing. In the well-protected, by Allah, Tripoli, may Allah strengthen him by his grace and his favor. Amen. Because our interests are one. Now, I think when he was speaking of a really stupid secretary, he was talking about the secretary on the Arabic side who drafted the contract. Because our aim is that acts may succeed by overthrowing justice, and the observance of duty, of treaties, of the sacred law, the Sharia, becomes praiseworthy by facts entirely. Amen. By making successful safety and security by permanence of innumerable benefits, and pure and unmixed issue, prosperity accompanied highness, and facilitation of good by length, and of the different kinds of joy makes permanent. Praise be to Allah for the comprehensive benefit in your perfect gifts. May Allah make them permanent for us and for you, and thus till the day of resurrection and judgment, as long as times last. Amen. Does that sound like... let me go back here. Let me go back. Does that sound like... what was that quote? As the government of the United States of America is not in any sense founded on the Christian religion. Did I just read that in the Arabic?
I didn't read that anyplace in the Arabic.
Yes.
The majority of it doesn't appear there.
So this is the Arabic, and a man called Joel Barlow translated this Arabic, clause 11, and came up with what we had there in the English. Now, yes, now how would that happen?
It'd have to be purposeful.
Say again, please, Paul. Paul?
It would have to be purposeful. I mean, these are not mistakes. These are purposeful, intentional acts of deceit for future use.
Yes. Yeah.
What surprises me, well, it doesn't surprise me, considering the state of our current Senate and House, that the senators would approve, because number one, we don't approve treaties anymore. Our country's just simply too divided in our Senate. The Senate's the one that's supposed to. This is why Obama got away with doing the Iran deal instead of calling it a treaty. But I find it odd that senators would not do the due diligence to ask for an accurate, or somebody, or at least get a third party to come in and translate that the contents of the treaty into English. to verify if you're ending this war, which really wasn't a war, but if you're ending this conflict, I would think that they would at least do their, take some type of responsibility to make sure it was correct, but they didn't.
But I have to go with Paul here. I mean, this is deception. Let's continue.
Well,
So
we had
Barlow,
the Jacobins back then in France, so I wouldn't be surprised if they were involved in some of this.
I believe they are. Yes, Paul. Well said. So now, Joel Barlow, you can find him mentioned on the Freedom from Religion Foundation. They love this man. But of course, they're very, shall we say, sparing with the details, sparing with the facts. They don't want to tell you too much now, do they? In Paris, Joel Barlow became a liberal in religion. Barlow helped Thomas Paine publish the first part of The Age of Reason, while Paine was imprisoned during the Reign of Terror in France. He became involved with the French Revolution, going so far as to be elected to the French Assembly and granted French citizenship in 1792. In other words, he was neck deep in the slop. Barlow was a liberal thinker. He left the ministry, took up law, and was admitted to the bar in 1786. As a writer and poet, he was a member of the well-known Hartford Wits. Barlow became a deist after traveling in France, according to C.B. Todd, Life and Letters of J. Barlow, 1886. So Barlow's claim to free thought fame, and free thought is a very specific word. Free thought means atheist. Free thought means someone who rejects God. So now we have to start examining Mr. Barlow's life a little more closely. His claim to free thought fame was his counsel to Algiers when he secured the release of prisoners and negotiated the treaty with Tripoli in 1797, which stated that the US was not a Christian nation. It was written in Algiers in Arabic and signed on November 4th. Barlow translated the treaty, which was ratified by the US Senate on May 29, 1797. George Washington was present when the treaty was signed in Tripoli, but it was signed by John Adams. Barlow befriended Thomas Paine and was responsible for getting Paine's The Age of Reason published. And we'll come back to this point in the future. Published during his imprisonment in Paris, Barlow became U.S. ambassador to Napoleon's court in 1811 and died in 1812 at age 58 in Poland while traveling to meet Napoleon during his retreat from Moscow. Now, Joel Barlow, the revolutionary atheist. Any thoughts from you guys? Any comment, Eric, Paul, before I go on?
Can you go back to the last slide? There was...
Of course.
Oh, I see. Okay, I was looking at the Thomas Paine reference. And okay, never mind.
The founding fathers were not happy with Thomas Paine, and they did not like his book. So there's a conflict that arises here. There's an ideological conflict that arises.
His other book, he wrote a book previously. It's called Common Sense, which was sold like
that was revolutionary here.
Yeah, so you're talking about 20 years prior, but I mean that it just sold like hotcakes, and is what really motivated the colonists to take up the fight against the British Crown. So it's just really crazy to see how quickly they would turn on him when he pens the Age of Reason.
Yeah. Yeah. Philip says, once ratified, a treaty becomes part of the supreme law of the land under Article 6 of the U.S. Constitution. Treaties are just slightly subordinate to constitutional law. However, this was a treaty on the surrender of Tripoli, not a treaty, not a mandate on the religious disposition of the United States government. So let's look at Joel Barlow, who becomes a revolutionary atheist. Let me see if I can just raise... let me just actually open this document. Yeah, this is from an article, Joel Barlow, Revolutionary Atheist. So let me just read this, and then I will come to the... So, Noah Webster of the Webster Dictionary fame published an article in a New York newspaper attacking Barlow. The degeneration of Barlow, he wrote, offered striking proof of the effect of atheism and licentious examples on the civility and good manners of a well-bred man. A Boston newspaper explained that Barlow's perversion as a result of the accursed, demoralizing powers of that modern French philosophy, and a Connecticut paper summarized Barlow's views as the quintessence of villainy. Turns out Barlow was not a good man, and people were saying this is not a good man. This man's a villain.
So this is the guy.
Jacobin.
I got this right. This is the guy that translated the
Arabic into English and inserted that false passage. Yeah.
Wow. Did not know this.
Yeah, that, like I said, that's why I make the big money on
Right.
YouTube. You know.
Right, yeah. Somebody's got to do it.
So,
We
the
got
indignation
Jacobin exposed.
Yep, exactly. He was The indignation derived from a letter Barlow had written defending the French Revolution, which was a bloodbath. It was genocidal, it was brutal, it was satanic in the extreme. But he defended it, and alluding to his religious views. Contemporary New England Protestants could be quick to describe religious heterodoxy as atheism, but in this case, they were not exaggerating. Americans, Barlow had come to believe, had thrown off the oppression of the crown, and the cross must go next. Americans must throw off the oppression of the cross. I wonder, does he have an agenda? Are you guys getting the feeling this man has an agenda?
Sounds like it.
So in part, through conversations with his friend Constantine Volney, author of The Ruins, or A Survey of the Revolutions of Empires of 1791, Barlow arrived at more radical views. Volney's Ruins argues that revolutions evolved from poetic and figurative attempts of early human societies to understand natural, especially astronomical phenomena. The basic idea was that man invented God. Most forms of religious worship presumed a deity so anthropomorphic as to be acts of egoism, projection. Volney and Barlow envisioned the faiths of the world combining into one rationalized religion, a one-world religion. Your thoughts, guys, before I go on.
It's like the natural. It's like the paganism gone wild. It's like I can think of. You can see the tree god versus the moon god versus the sun god, all battling it out in the ring. And then whoever wins becomes the big god of all. They don't have a concept of what a god is.
Yeah, let me bring this up. So now this is an article that I sourced from. Let me find you guys again. Sorry, I just. Here we go. This I sourced from The Guardian. Joel Barlow, Revolutionary Atheist by Sam Hasselby. And so this is a real article. You guys can find this online. And let me just bring up the PDF document again. Joel Barlow. He stayed abroad, mostly in France, but also in Britain and Algeria. Noah Webster obviously stated, and so the cross had to go. So you can see that I've just summarized, right? And he ends, it says here, he ends with representatives of the major religions discarding the symbols of their faith to join into a one-world governing council based in a crystal palace in Mesopotamia. Yes. So Barlow's atheism was tantamount to despising the bosom of our mother. The message was clear, right? Even the French thinks he has gone too far. Now notice, this is not atheism. This is preaching straight up paganism. Or, well, I don't know, what's the one world government? Freemasonry? I don't know what that would be, but that is something radical.
I was just thinking, you read the last thing about this guy. It was, it's just so reminiscent of the book of Revelation, and how John describes what the end of the world is going to be like, is having a one world government, having a one world religion. And that's pretty prophetic.
Yeah, so you can see how he accidentally inserted an entire paragraph that didn't exist in the original into the English language document. So a contract is not valid if it is not a true meeting of minds and intentions. So you've got the Arabic that does not correspond with the English. So is that a valid treaty? One has to ask. No, legally it's not.
Well, then let's go back to war.
So again?
Let's go take Tripoli then. It's ours. It was ours to begin with.
Go for it. Yeah, so Joel Barlow was a rabid anti-Christian atheist. So James Turner, in his book Without God, Without Creed, The Origins of Unbelief in America, suggested Barlow is a plausible candidate for America's first atheist. But because he was such a rabid supporter of the French Revolution, he would have been a virulently anti-Christian believer. And remember, the French Revolution was not only the flowering of Freemasonry as a genocidal ideology, but also it was paganism, dressed up as atheism. According to Turner, God was understood as epistemologically necessary even for those who rejected organized religion. Knowledge was thought only possible via science, and science required nature to be consistent and regulated by discoverable rules. God was the ground of those rules and thus the guarantor of rationality. To be skeptical of God was to be skeptical of the possibility of knowledge. And therefore, God is the logos, God is logic. And when you stray from God, you become then, of course, no longer rational. You become, well, you move into relativism. There is no truth. There is no objective truth. Your thoughts, Eric? I see you nodding your head.
Well, when we look at the French Revolution, our country it was actually the French were the ones that helped us win our revolution. And so when France has their revolution and you have the reign of terror and they're cutting off everybody's head left and right, our country was very slow to detach ourselves from the French, to separate ourselves from the French, in the sense that we felt that we still owed them a huge debt of gratitude from our own revolution. So when we start dealing with the French, as evident, and I mentioned earlier in the XYZ affair, how they were stealing our ships and cargo, but that was only because the French and the British were fighting each other in perpetuity. But the point I'm trying to make is all of these feelings we probably turned a blind eye to, or maybe had this blind spot going on because of our developed innate feelings towards the French at that time. So when this guy starts writing these atheistic and these absolutely godless type screeds, and he translates this for the Senate to look at, they probably had a blind eye to that, or a blind side to that.
Yeah, they wanted him, Jefferson and Washington wanted him to write the history of the US, like a biography of the country. And also he was very much a campaigner for anti-slavery. So therefore they overlooked it because, one, they wanted him to write this biography of the country, and two, to become a anti-slavery campaigner. So they kind of overlooked that for that period. But also, I mentioned in the previous episode, there were two enlightenments. There was the Christian Enlightenment, and there was the atheist, secular, pagan Enlightenment. And the American Revolution was founded on the Christian Enlightenment, not on the French model. And he was very much
absolutely true.
So let's continue. So Barlow came to his tentative atheism through the influence of a man called Paul Henry Thierry Baron de Holbach, who I've covered in my atheism series, who was a rabid atheist, anti-Christian atheist. He published anti-religious works anonymously in Amsterdam and hosted the Parisian Salon that contained many or most of the known unbelievers preceding the French Revolution. De Holbach argued that the universe, that vast assemblage of everything that exists, presents only matter and motion. The whole offers to our contemplation nothing but an immense and uninterrupted succession of causes and effects. So holding to that conception of materialism, which is mechanical materialism, he was, it has been noted, long and loud in his expressions of atheism. So this was so provocative a position at that point, even Voltaire disavowed it. I will say here that Voltaire was probably a little bit of a social coward, and while Voltaire might privately have believed all this stuff, he wouldn't come out and admit it. He claimed to be a deist, when, as far as I can tell, Voltaire was explicitly an atheist. In 1795, sorry?
I was going to say Voltaire was a punk. I'm sorry.
He was.
Yes.
He was a bit of a, I mean, come on, he was shagging his brother's daughter.
Well, this is what you always find in these types. I mean, he's the one that coined the phrase. He says, my writings that are going to supersede are going to be founded upon the writing corpse of Christianity, or something, words to that effect.
Yeah.
There's the arrogance of this guy, and then the what would we call that, where you get retribution, righteous retribution. Anyway, one of the museums, or one of the places where I don't know if it was, people said it was his childhood home, and it really wasn't his childhood home, but it was something that he had been affiliated with. Christian organization went in and bought it, and now they're printing Bibles in that building purposely to stick it to Voltaire. That's what I'm sorry.
That's right.
That's what
Voltaire, I covered him. I mean, the guy was into incest, and he had a few problems, let's say. Nicodemus says some historians argue it was founded on Native American law, especially the Mohawk law. Algonquin. Those historians are taught the word here, and this is scientific. The word is poop.
I've gone to a couple of those sessions because I live in the area where the Iroquois were from, and when you look at what they're arguing and what they're presenting, there's nothing there.
Yeah.
What do they argue? I missed that. What did Nico say?
People like to make the claim that the American Indians are the founder of the other.
American Indians are the founder of what?
America's constitutional law, the American spirit and all that. And I mean, look, I can do an episode on this in the future, but the American Indians were primitive, violent, brutal, disgusting, and all the claims about, these people are in tune with nature. That's just so much nonsense. It is laughable nonsense.
They were cannibals.
King Philip's War.
Paul broke up there and disappeared. Yeah, his connection is pretty bad.
Well,
I mean,
tribes, they practice cannibalism. I mean, that's not Christian. Not that I'm aware of it.
I mean, the claims that the American Indians were some kind of saintly group that really were connected to nature and reality, nonsense. They were primitive beasts.
They had, and rightly so, they had to be, because they were in the competition for food and with one another. I mean, they practiced slavery. They practiced raiding each other's tribes to take, women, to take land, to take food. I mean, this is why we called them savages, for Pete's sake, is because there was no civility amongst them, because they had to compete. They competed that way. Our favorite little Indian girl in our country, not Pocahontas, who was the one? Sacagawea, and Lewis and Clark, the Louisiana Purchase guys. She was a slave. She was an Indian slave that was sold. She was sold to a French fur trader by the name of Charbonneau. So you're absolutely right to say that, our Constitution has nothing to do with the traditions and practices of the American Indian.
I mean, and like, I'm from South Africa, and there, of course, it's like white people are responsible for the poverty of black people. The thing is, the blacks were living in the Stone Age when the whites got there.
In South Africa, what you're saying?
Yeah, I mean, okay. So when you get to Africa, the blacks were living in the Stone Age, maybe the Bronze Age at best, and now it's we are poor and primitive because of the white people. It's like, no, you were 20,000 years in the past when we got here. Okay, okay, let's continue. So 1795, 6 years after the French Revolution, Barlow wrote a letter from France to America praising the Holbach's work. I rejoice, he wrote, in the progress of good sense over the damnable imposture of Christian mummery. In the same letter, Barlow endorsed the Holbach's depiction of the Apostle Paul as a famous mountebank. In other words, a fraud and imposter. Oh, Paul's disappeared again. So yeah, I get the feeling he's got a thing against Christianity. Do you get that feeling, Eric?
It sounds a wee bit like that. But I want to keep an open mind.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's continue. So Barlow tells us that God is stupid. Entries below, made in his notebooks between 1799 and 1801, are sprinkled with references to writings that maintained there was no such thing as an intelligent God. All religions are illusions. Now, you will be able to go back and find reference to Barlow being a very good Christian, someone who had great ethics, went to church, maybe he was even a minister, blah, blah, blah. And then the guy fell off the wagon. Okay, but they forget to tell you that part. That's why I think it's important to bring the part that actually is what's important. He then objected to prayers to a sentient supreme being on the grounds that reason and intelligence were attributes of a dependent rather than an independent agent. So if God were indeed sovereign, he would be the equivalent of nature, and as such, without intelligence. That sounds like that's solidly Christian right there. Or am I getting this wrong?
Indeed, sovereign. Okay. Wow, this is such idiocy.
This sounds
I
like
mean,
Charles
it doesn't.
Darwin stuff.
Sorry, Eric?
I don't
So
think Darwin's that stupid. I just don't think
Um,
Darwin would be that stupid.
Okay,
at all.
Paul first. Okay, let's go. Paul, you first, please.
I
Please go
don't
ahead.
think Darwin would be this stupid because he.
Darwin was this stupid.
Oh my gosh!
That's what I was going to
Just
say.
say this, saying just. I mean, it's like taking. It's disavowing all of history, and it's. I mean, you get. This is where I get back and go into Jacobian and type thought process. This is the only thing I can think of with this. It doesn't combine universalism. It denies all of human history, as far as I'm concerned.
Right. Eric?
Well, I was just say that statement sounds like something Richard Dawkins would say.
Now that I would agree with.
Yeah, I'd agree.
And
100%.
Dawkins, I mean, he is probably the most ardent and militant Darwinist alive today.
Yeah.
That's and so and like I said, this is something that Darwin would say. And what Darwin tries to do is he tries to make nature itself God. And so to say that nature is without intelligence would be, and I hate to disagree with you, Paul, but nature is without intelligence is absolutely absurd on its. I mean, just the study of a simple single cell will tell you that intelligence is necessary in nature itself. So,
Yeah.
this guy, he's par for the course. Sorry to derail the discussion.
So are we starting to get an inkling as to the agenda, the character, the anti-Christian bias of this particular man who somehow translated an English sentence that does not exist in the original Arabic contract? Somehow this happened. Do we think we have a reason here?
The reason why he did this, or why it not exists?
I mean, I think we can see what he was trying to do. He was trying to get away with.
Yeah, it's pretty obvious when based on what you're showing us, what some of his comments have been and what people have said about him. It's absolutely obvious why that would be included in that document.
Yeah,
I think his whole intention was to attempt to destroy what is a Christian nation with a pretend comment, inserting a pretend comment. He knew that he was on his way out and that he wouldn't live long, but he didn't. He thought it could destroy America later on.
Yeah, I think so. He's trying to do what damage he could, leaving landmines. Bless you, Eric. Right. So let's ask the obvious. It's a treaty in Tripoli aimed at ending a conflict with Muslim pirates, the appropriate context for a definitive statement on the U.S. allegiance to God. And I hope we can understand the answer is no. So the founding documents acknowledge divine authority and moral principles influenced by Christianity. And we're going to have a look at that today. And they do not equate an international treaty with a proclamation of national faith. So, yeah, there was some funny business here. And for those atheists and secularists and conspiracy theorists and other wild-eyed, crazy people who in the chat have been telling us about, actually, you're wrong. You are inadequate researchers and someone lied to you and you believed it. So please go and fix that. They is gaslighting you. So let's look at the Declaration of Independence, 1776. The phrase nature's God is used to refer to a divine authority that grants rights, indicating a belief in a higher power. And we're going to check and see if this is a one-off, a mistake, an accident, or if there's a pattern. So the document states that all men are endowed by their creator with certain unalienable rights, explicitly referencing a creator. The U.S. Constitution, 1787. While the Constitution does not explicitly mention God, the preamble refers to the blessings of liberty, which invokes divine favor for the nation. The Northwest Ordinance, 1787, passed alongside the Constitution, states religion, morality, and knowledge being necessary to good government and the happiness of mankind. Schools and the means of education shall forever be encouraged. What should the schools encourage? Well, learning in morality, religion, and knowledge. So now, don't forget, these organic documents, like the U.S. Constitution and the Northwest Ordinance, are 4 documents that are foundational to all other laws in the U.S. These cannot be changed. These are foundational, and all other documents refer to these, and these laws cannot be altered.
The Northwest Ordinance itself was a law that was passed by, they call it the Confederation Congress. Because before we had our Constitution, we were operating under what they call the Articles of Confederation, which was like the Constitution prior to the Constitution. And in the Northwest Ordinance, what that did, it established how states would be added, but also it would establish how townships would be added. And one of those was the calling for a school to be centrally located within that township itself. And the purpose of this school was to do what? Teach the kids how to read and write. Teach the kids to read what?
The Bible.
Exactly. So if you look at the colonial period, that was one of the foundational tenets of each of the colonies, was teaching the individual to read and understand the Bible without having somebody in the tradition of the Catholic Church and the Anglican Church, oh, by the way, tell you what the Bible means.
Yeah. So let's look at the Federalist Papers. In Federalist number 2, John Jay mentions that Providence has been pleased to give this one connected country to one united people. Providence, again, is the most common term that was used by people like Washington and Jefferson for God. Providence meaning that God is interested in the world. He cares about the world. He's involved in the world. He guides the world. He has a plan for the world, and he moves everything and everyone to a purpose. So that means that God is active in the world, therefore they are not deists. That contradicts the point of claiming that they were all deists. So a people descended from the same ancestors, speaking the same language, professing the same religion, and attached to the same principles of government. That same religion being Christianity, referring to Christianity as a unifying factor among the states. So one of the major unifying factors is language, ancestry, and religion under the same principles of government, which are Christian. Eric?
There's a lot of places I go with this, but the Federalist Papers, a lot of people don't understand what the Federalist Papers were. When we became a country, we did not have our Constitution. As I said, I just mentioned earlier, we operate under the Articles of Confederation. The Articles of Confederation were way too weak, so we had to pass a Constitution. We had to write a Constitution. And these Federalist Papers themselves, although they did not carry any legal weight, but what they did was when that Constitution was written and it was sent out to the states for ratification, what they were essays that were published in newspapers within each of the colonies' capitals to encourage people to push for the ratification of the Constitution. And when you look at these Federalist Papers and the beliefs at that time, they still realized, right there, it says professing the same religion, still realized that we all shared the same religion, which was Christianity. It's found not only in the Federalist Papers, but also in states' constitutions.
We're going to get to that. Good point.
Yeah. Sorry, don't steal your thunder. But this is where we find this common thread, even though it doesn't come out and says we're a Christian nation. When you read these writings, just like this one, this is where you find these nuggets supporting that thesis.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think you know by now, I'm really, really thorough. That's why I keep saying that's why I make the big money on YouTube, because of my attention to detail. Maybe I should just stop saying that, because I'm just going to depress myself. I thought YouTube was going to make me rich, but somehow I clearly did something wrong. All right, let's continue. So, the Mayflower Compact, 1620. This early document references the glory of God and advancement of the Christian faith, highlighting its foundational role in American governance. These are people who came here with a Christian agenda in mind. So notice this is the Mayflower Compact. In the name of God, amen. Right? So the whole names are under those whose names are underwritten, the loyal subjects of our dread sovereign, Lord King James, and by the grace of God, of Great Britain, France, and Ireland, and King and Defender of the Faith. That sounds a little bit religious to me. I could be wrong, but stuff mentioning God, that could be kind of religious, but that could just be me.
We used to, when I would teach the Mayflower Compact, what I would do is we would do a closed read on this, meaning we would go through this thing line by line, word by word. And one of the things that I tell the students to do is I said, I want you to go ahead and read through this thing, take a couple minutes here, and circle any reference to God. And then after that, we would always come to the conclusion. I said, do you think that the Pilgrims and the founders who set up all these colonies believed in this idea of separation of church and state? And they would all, and I don't, you might say, well, Eric, you're just pushing your religion on people. No, again, this is one of those foundational principles in our country that clearly demonstrates, even though this was, 150 years prior to the Constitution, it clearly shows that our nation was bounded upon, even in the colonial period, based on Christian precepts.
Right. Philip says Lloyd is storing up his treasure in heaven. Yeah. Well, let's hope. Well, let's hope. Because I certainly don't have it here. But let's go. So let's briefly talk about the separation of church and state in this context. So the phrase "separation of church and state" does not appear in the U.S. Constitution. So now have a look at this newspaper article. Justice Black revealed as Ku Klux Klansman. Mm-hmm. Evidence shows his membership for a long period. And here is a letter by, this is Supreme Court Justice Black, written on the KKK letterhead. Okay, let's continue and see what are we talking about here. So the phrase separation of church and state comes from a letter written by Thomas Jefferson. I've covered it briefly previously, and I will be coming back to it in more detail in the future. Supreme Court Justice Hugo Black helped establish this concept in U.S. law. So a member of the KKK with a lifetime membership, enforced the idea of separation of church and state in a secular sense, the way it is understood today, which is not at all the way it was understood at the time of the Founding Fathers and in early America. So Supreme Court Justice Hugo Black, who was on the court from 37 to 71, was a member of the Ku Klux Klan. His affiliation began in 23 and lasted until 1925 when he resigned, but he was welcomed back in 1926 while campaigning for the Senate, receiving a lifetime membership. He actively sought Klan support, delivering anti-Catholic speeches that resonated with Klan members and helped secure his election. He was also influenced by his particular hatred of Jews. So Black's motivation was to shut down Catholic influence, and Black's past Klan membership was revealed by journalist Ray Spriegel in 1937, for which he earned a Pulitzer Prize. So the Bible and Christian religious beliefs are integral to the founding of the country. Many of the founding fathers were ministers or very active in the church, and many recent court decisions on religion are wrongly decided, must be challenged, and need to go back to the Supreme Court. Any comment before I go forward, guys?
Yes. This separation of church and state shtick that he was referencing was motivated, again, because he was a Klansman, very anti-Catholic. And I'll just tell you, perfectly honest with you, the temperature of our country at that time had that mindset of supporting the Klan. And so this really wasn't a big deal at that time. Today, we would think, we would, burn him at the stake. But at that time, it wasn't a big deal. But at that time, he was so anti-Catholic, and the reason is that they were using buses, public school buses, to bus kids to Catholic schools. That's why he wanted to put in there this wall between. There's a wall between church and state, of course, taking Jefferson's letter to the Danbury Baptists out of context. And also Jefferson got that idea from a guy by the name of Roger Williams, who, I'm not taking your thunder, am I?
No, go ahead.
No, you got the idea of Roger Williams, who was ostracized by I think it was the Massachusetts Bay Colony. He was thrown out because he did not completely agree with their religious doctrine. So here you have him saying that he founds this colony based on the idea that there is a separation between the state governments and the religions, because they were practicing, what do they call that, where you practice the
tithing?
No, it's good night. Congregation.
Quakers?
Congregationalism. I'm sorry.
These are
Congregationalism.
Quakers,
Congregationalists. The congregation in order to vote in these colonies. So Black, what he's doing here, he takes this phrase from Jefferson completely out of context, turns it on his head, and then writes this Supreme Court decision, and it's against the Board of Education somewhere, and it has been parroted by people ad nauseum in our country, saying, well, you can't have that because we have a separation of church and state. When the idea was that it was the church or the state not getting involved in the church, not the church being involved in the state. It's completely backwards.
Yeah, no, I covered it briefly in previous episodes, and I mean, it's completely wrong-headed. It's totally against the practice of the Founding Fathers. So the Founding Fathers were church ministers. So many Founding Fathers were church ministers who had significant religious ties. So let's take John Witherspoon. There are lesser well-known Founding Fathers, and of course the famous ones. A Presbyterian minister, the only clergyman to sign the Declaration of Independence. He was an educator at and also president of Princeton University, which was founded as a religious Christian university. Samuel Adams, often referred to as the father of the American Revolution, a Congregationalist who played a crucial role in organizing resistance to British rule. John Jay, member of the Anglican Church, served as the first Chief Justice of the United States and deeply involved in early American politics. Charles Carroll, a Roman Catholic, signed off the Declaration of Independence, a prominent advocate for religious freedom. George Washington, while not a minister, and I've got an entire section dedicated to George Washington, which will come up. While not a minister, he was an Anglican and regularly attended services reflecting very strong Christian beliefs. Thomas Jefferson, often characterized as a deist, falsely, he had deep respect for Christianity and its moral teachings, which influenced his political philosophy. I've covered them both, but look at some of the previous episodes for that, and I will do more in the future. James Madison, father of the Constitution, an Anglican who believed in the importance of religion in public life. So these are Christians that were very much active in the politics of the day, and they contributed to both religious thought and political action and to the formation of the founding documents and philosophy of the U.S. Any comment before I continue with these lesser-known founding fathers?
I keep going. This is good.
So the lesser-known founding fathers were also ministers who had very strong religious ties. So Elijah Craig, a Baptist minister, one of the early advocates for religious freedom in Virginia. He was also known for founding a distillery that produced bourbon. John Peter Muhlenberg, an Episcopal minister, became a general in the Continental Army, known for his famous sermon that led to his enlistment in the Revolutionary War. So these are Christians very much involved in politics and involved in the foundation of America. Francis Hopkinson, recognized as a sign of the Declaration of Independence, also involved in church activities and had a background in religious education. And we're somehow supposed to believe that these people just suddenly somehow became atheists, deists, and Satanists like 5 seconds after they won the Revolutionary War. And then, they just reverted immediately to the same kind of personality that Mr. Joel Barlow had. William Ellery, sign of the Declaration. He was a Rhode Islander with the Congregational Church with a strong moral and ethical focus influenced by his faith. Richard Stockton, Presbyterian, active in both religion and politics. He was a sign of the Declaration and known for his commitment to education and civic duty. Robert Morris, Known as a financier of the revolution, Morris was also an active member of the Episcopal Church and engaged in charitable activities. So this is just to show you that you've got religious beliefs and political involvement that intersect here with all of these people during America's founding, even if their roles in the church is not widely recognized. In fact, they tend to be ignored and downplayed.
I would say that before the Constitution is written, before the Declaration is written, we can't leave out one of the most important periods of history, which is the Great Awakening. And that is part of the reason why you see all of these Christian men as who they are. Now, this Great Awakening causes two things. One, it's an incredible move of evangelism. Now, this move of evangelism causes many people to accept Christ. And the first thing they want to know how to do after they accept Christ is, how do I read? All right. They go and they start reading. Okay. Now you've got the ability, the reasoning for the newspapers and the transfer of knowledge that people want to read the Bible. All right. That's what it comes down to. They want to read the Bible for themselves. They don't want someone to read it for them. Sorry, as Americans, the way of life here was, if I can't do it myself, I don't want anybody else to do it for me. And during this time period, they didn't want people to do things for them. They wanted to be able to discover things for themselves. And that's the reality. That's all this stuff happens because the person who is the Christian, the person who is the preacher, is supposed to be the most knowledgeable person in your community. And that's how it was. So you see these ministers stepping up and doing what God has for them to do, because, you know, again, I'm going back to the Great Awakening period. You see this happening, and then, you know, again, people found out who Jesus was. They wanted to read the Bible, is what it came down to, and they couldn't shut up.
America had the highest literacy
is.
rate. I mean, America had the highest literacy rate at the time, even amongst girls, and was because of the urge to read the Bible. So, yep, let's continue. So now let's talk about Justice William Orville Douglas. He died January 19th, 1980. He was a justice of the U.S. Supreme Court for 36 years after having taught law at Yale and Columbia. In the 1952 case of Zorak versus Clausen, Justice Douglas wrote, "The First Amendment, however, does not say that in every and all respects there shall be a separation of church and state. Otherwise, the state and religion would be aliens to each other, hostile, suspicious, and even unfriendly. Municipalities would not be permitted to render police or fire protection to religious groups. Policemen who helped parishioners into their places of worship would violate the Constitution. Prayers in our legislative halls, the appeals to the Almighty and the messages of the chief executives, the proclamations making Thanksgiving Day a holiday, so help me God, in our courtroom oaths, these and all other references to the Almighty that run through our laws, our public rituals, our ceremonies, would be flouting the First Amendment." So guys, the lesson I want you to take away from this: don't listen to people who are chief justices in the Supreme Court from Harvard and Yale. Listen to the crazy, no-name conspiracy theorist in the YouTube chat section. Those guys know what's rocking. Right, guys? Yeah. So
there's a book, if I may, Lloyd, there's a book written by a gentleman by the name of Mark Levin. He's a very popular talk show host here in the United States. Mm-hmm. And it's called Men in Black. And in this book, what he does is he goes through and analyzes the lives of some of these Supreme Court justices that have held these positions in our most esteemed court. There it is. Thank you. Yeah. And it's crazy what some of these people turned out to be and did during their lives, and still sat in judgment of the rest of us peasants.
Yeah, I mean, like the KKK judge from before. I mean, this guy literally turned the law upside down. Yeah, and legislating from the bench. So these are things that I think we need to. That's why I'm trying to highlight some of these.
This guy didn't make it into his book, by the way. I'm just saying.
Which you'd have to ask why. Yeah, you know. So a fastidious atheist or agnostic could even object to the supplication with which the court opens each session. God save the United States and this honorable court. This sounds very Christian language to me, very lots of God and so help me God. And it doesn't sound like a strict separation between church and state somehow. So,
Oh, that only exists in the Communist Manifesto, is my understanding.
yeah.
Well, what's
So,
crazy is we have a Supreme Court justice today that doesn't even know what a woman is. That tells you how low the
fire
bar
that
is.
woman.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Ottoman R donated $5 through Super Chat. Thank you very, very much. Really appreciate it. Thank you very much. I really do appreciate the support. It goes a long, long way. So thank you. Yeah. So Justice Douglas continued. We are a religious people whose institutions presuppose a supreme being. When the state encourages religious instruction, it follows from the best of our traditions, which means he's saying this is in line with our historical traditions in the United States. For it then respects the religious nature of our people and accommodates the public service to their spiritual needs. To hold that it may not would be to find in the Constitution a requirement that the government show a callous indifference to religious groups. That would be preferring those who believe in no religion over those who do believe. I'll make a warning here that there is the claim by atheists and secularists that really their preference is for no religion, that they are promoting no religion, they're promoting neutrality, and this is utterly false. They are explicitly anti-Christian, rabidly so. Woke is the new religion. Paganism was the religion of the French Revolution. It was not just neutral atheism, it was not reason, it was the cult of reason, the cult of Diana, the cult of whatever Roman god they had going at the time, and Roman Greek god mix. So these people are not neutral. They're not looking for neutrality. They are looking to push their religion. And it's paganism. We're just going back to 2000 BC. And he finally says, we find no constitutional requirement which makes it necessary for government to be hostile to religion. We cannot read into the Bill of Rights such a philosophy of hostility to religion. And Lydia says, I trust Lloyd because he does his research. Thank you. I really do. I mean, look, everything is on the screen. I'm not just sitting here talking to a camera, right? I don't do that. I don't ever do that. I show you the references. I'll show you the newspapers. I'll show you the textbooks. I show you the pictures, the names, the dates, the people, the quotes. Look them up. I mean, seriously, look them up. I mean, I do it so you don't have to, but it's not like I just make things up. I don't sit here and talk to the camera for 3 hours and tell you, trust me, bro. Any comment, guys, before I go on?
Yeah. This is good stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, and atheism is religion, for sure. I mean, I've covered that in my atheism series. It was a religion, was founded as a religion, was promoted as a religion, was the new religion, the replacement of Christianity. Then in the 80s, they realized, oops, we've painted ourselves into a corner, and they changed the messaging. So, right. Now let's look at state constitutions. The last couple of pages. We'll go a couple more pages, and we are done with this segment. So, the state constitutions. Apparently, about 94% of the United States state constitutions are about God. Apparently, now this number could be higher because the 3 that I was told did not mention God. I checked 2 of them and they both had God in them. So, okay. So it could be 49 out of 50. But at least 47 of the 50 states have preambles invoking the name of Almighty God. Now, a joint congressional resolution could permit voluntary school prayer using language from any state constitution that acknowledges divine power. And once this was signed by the president, this would take immediate effect. So the Supreme Court would uphold such a resolution as ruling against permitting school prayer across the United States, would effectively invalidate religious references in those states' own constitutions themselves. And in fact, it would then declare the state constitutions unconstitutional when those state constitutions explicitly reference thanks to God. Any comment before I continue? Because this should be an interesting section for the audience, especially.
Especially considering Thanksgiving is coming up here in the States.
Yeah. So now I will mention a handful of state constitutions. We, the people of Alabama, invoking the favor and guidance of Almighty God, do ordain and establish this Constitution. Well, invoking the favor and guidance of Almighty God. That's an interesting way to open your Constitution when you're a godless state. We, the people of the state of California, grateful to Almighty God for our freedom, in order to secure and perpetuate its blessings, do establish this Constitution. Odd thing, California, you've lost your way.
I was going to say, of all the places, that would be the one I would have thought, but I know better.
I know some of them may have changed some of their constitutions. They might have an earlier and a later one, but yeah, I mean, you don't just casually change a constitution, though. The people of Connecticut, acknowledging with gratitude the good providence of God in having permitted them to enjoy a free government. Where did freedom come from? From God. Humbly invoking the blessings of Almighty God, the people of the state of Texas do ordain and establish this Constitution, invoking the blessings of Almighty God. We, the people of the state of Arizona, grateful to Almighty God for our liberties. Where do liberties come from? From God. Do ordain this Constitution. And I decided I had to throw this one in. We, the people of the state of New York, grateful to Almighty God for our freedom, in order to secure its blessings, do establish this Constitution. And it's amazing how many people I've seen say that freedom of speech, these are privileges assigned by the government.
What I would say is you should, if you come to America and you go to the original places where the Capitol buildings are, like in Connecticut in particular, or New England in particular, you will find preachers as statues on their state Capitol buildings. You'll find great men of God. You'll find you'll find stuff of Moses. You'll find stuff about the prophets there. It's amazing. The Connecticut Capitol building, I think it's something everyone should see. To kind of say there's no nothing, they wanted to separate God. No, if they put God all over their Capitol building and the Christian ministers and stuff all over their Capitol buildings, no, they believed that there was no separation. They believed that it was wholly impossible to separate.
Right. Agreed. Eric?
What I was going to say deals with the separation of church and state, and the addition of states having to abide by the Constitution of the United States. The Constitution, when you look at the first 10 amendments, the Bill of Rights to our Constitution, the First Amendment alone has 5 rights in there where I can't. What was that?
That was Paul.
Sorry. The 5 rights: freedom, religion, assembly, press, protest, and speech. The 2 that are in there, the religion and the speech, go hand in hand. So if a state, when these states ratified their constitutions, they're going to say that we're not going to establish a religion. However, we're going to give you the freedom to, number 1, practice it, because it says Congress shall make no law respecting the establishment of religion, nor prohibiting the free practice thereof. People always forget that part. And then free speech, where they can either defend their religion or say that they don't want to have anything to do with it. But the fact is that each of these states, when they joined as states, the United States, mention God is just absolutely critical in understanding our Christian roots. And this clearly indicates that. Just a great example of how we are a Christian nation.
Yeah, no, thanks. So, guys, I think this is the final page. There might be one more page, but yeah, we're winding down. But hopefully, this has been instructive. Hopefully, it's been a learning experience for you. Hopefully, it just adds more evidence to the piles of evidence. And you can see the claim about the Treaty of Tripoli. You can see there's some funny business going on there, right? And next week, I want to talk about Justice Antonin Scalia, something that he talks about. I mean, he was a great guy. I used to love listening to him speak when he was alive. Right, let's have a look at some further preambles and school prayer. We, the people of the state of Florida, being grateful to Almighty God for our constitutional liberty. Interesting. Didn't they get the memo that America is an atheist country? We, the people of Alaska, grateful to God and to those who founded our nation. We, the people of Colorado, with profound reverence for the supreme ruler of the universe. To perpetuate the principles of free government, ensure justice to all, preserve peace, promote the interests and happiness of the citizen and of the family, and transmit to posterity the enjoyment of liberty, we, the people of Georgia, relying upon the protection and guidance of Almighty God, to ordain and establish this Constitution. So somehow these states didn't get the memo that the United States is an atheist country. I don't get it. What is wrong with these states? We, the people of the state of Idaho, grateful to Almighty God for our freedom, to secure its blessings and promote our common welfare, to establish this Constitution. We, the people of Kansas, grateful to Almighty God for our civil and religious privileges. Those privileges don't come from the government, they come from God. They come from the Creator. They are part and parcel of the fabric of reality. Note the consistency that is present in these preambles. I could have done several dozen. Okay, that we would have been a whole day reading those things.
What were the three states that didn't have it, Lloyd?
When I checked, man, I think the reference I was given was wrong. It's supposed to be California, Illinois, and one other, Dakota or something. So one of the Dakotas, I think. But it was wrong. I checked, and the two that I checked, Illinois and California, they both had God in their preambles.
So that might not even be. There might only be one state out there.
Possibly, yeah. I mean, although you can see, like the detractors will say, well, this one says supreme being. It doesn't say God. So, okay, sure, it's this flying spaghetti monster. You got me there. You know. Paul, your comment? Anything?
I love this. I love that you're showing this. And again, another state is up here that is extremely liberal, which is Colorado, where you can get your marijuana and smoke it, and doesn't matter if you're doing it for medicine or. And New York State's another one now on that list. But again, they realized who the supreme ruler of the universe was. They might have forgotten today, but historically, it's documented for the world to know.
Yep, it's there. So school prayer, to talk about school prayer briefly. School prayer is an acknowledgement that American civil and religious liberty is bestowed through divine providence. While prayer reaffirms our faith in and dependence on God to sustain and protect it. So this principle is clearly reflected in all of these religious state constitutions because they open with an acknowledgement and thanks to God. Now, state constitutions 2. American constitutions, both federal and state, are fundamentally based on the theological principles outlined in the Declaration of Independence. Now, this connection has been missed because of a philosophy, which is obviously from the French Revolution and so on, because of what's called legal positivism, which does not understand how natural or divine laws relate to human laws. It sees a complete divide. It sees an artificial separation. However, this relationship was very clear to the founding fathers. So this is an artificial separation between church and state, or shall we say religion and state. The founding fathers and the Constitution are not hostile to the integration of religious principles and the state. That term, separation, simply means the state does not create a state church, which it controls. The state does not create a church that is dominant over all of the others. People are free to practice, and through the free market of ideas, one church might become dominant, but it is not because it is a state-endorsed church. Although the US state does endorse Christianity. I think we've covered that thoroughly in other episodes. And America is a Christian nation, and those are those statements of the fathers. Comment before I go on, guys. Any thoughts?
There were at our founding, there were states that did have an official religion.
Yes,
there was two or maybe three of them. I can't remember which one.
I'll talk about that when I get to Washington. Yeah, I'll mention that. Yeah, but you're right. Yeah, I'm trying to kind of keep it on theme so we don't, Yeah, so okay. When we consider why there's a moral obligation to obey the laws of the state or the United States, the answer is straightforward. These laws are intended to secure these rights, which are believed to have been given to us by our Creator, God, the Christian God of the Bible, to secure these rights. That's why we have to follow these laws. So, constitutional governments have no other purpose but to render valuable rights whose origin is independent of the human will, independent of the state, rights that are unalienable because they are fixed eternally in, as is stated in the Declaration of Independence, these rights are fixed in the laws of nature and of nature's God. So numerous governments throughout history, particularly totalitarian regimes, have claimed legitimacy based on the idea of consent from the people. That's why you can have the People's Republic of North Korea, the People's Republic of China, ostensibly governing based on the will of the people. However, those rights flow from the government, not from God, not from principle outside of the government's will. So true consent in the context of US Republican constitutions is founded on the recognition of equal and unalienable rights inherent to each individual given by God, and consent must stem from the acknowledgement and protection of these divine God-given rights. So in a US context, this includes the rights to freedom of speech, to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, as outlined in the Declaration of Independence and protected by the Constitution, whose origin is in a supreme being, in God. I'll pause there. You guys' thoughts? I think that's where I've got one more slide, but your thoughts before we continue to the next slide. Last slide, I think.
Yeah, I'd just like to add something about the Declaration of Independence. When you look at the Declaration of Independence, and you've referenced it several times, but when you read, I brought up the preamble here. Of course, as we hold these truths, we self-evident, all men are created and died by their Creator. With rights are given to you by their Creator, what man can take away a right granted to you by God? But the second part of this preamble, it reads that when any form of government becomes destructive, before that it says that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed, of the people. They get their power from the people. That when any form of government becomes destructive, they sense it is the right of the people to alter or abolish. Sounds pretty crazy. And to abolish it and to institute a new government, laying its foundations on such principles, and organizing its powers in such form as they shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness. So it's saying that we have the right to abolish a government that does not protect our rights given to us by God, or does not recognize that these rights come from God, not the government. Jefferson, when we start talking about Jefferson, he was a deist and he didn't believe in God. Shut your pie hole. This clearly demonstrates that he believed in God, and that might not be in Jesus Christ as being, divine or whatever, but he believed in God. So these atheists that try to make this charge that we're supposed to be an atheistic nation are just full of pooey.
Yes.
The United States is one of the only government structures that promises the right of rebellion, the right to change the government, the right of the people to abolish the government. I don't know if any other government that has has that in their founding governmental structure documents. But I look at it this way. The people said, look, if you don't base your structure on God and the belief in God and the morality that the Bible gives, what do you got? You got nothing. And we get what we have right now. We have Biden.
Right. Well, actually, no. The time of the emperor is coming. So yeah, let's finish. I believe this is my final slide. Yes, one more slide, and I'll finish off with my final observations. I'll give you guys each a last word, and yeah, we call it a night. Because after that, the next thing I go to Justice Antonin Scalia. That'll be for next week. So there's a very flimsy case made by atheists, socialists, and other ists, blue-haired people who really could probably do with better hygiene. So their case is made using a very narrow interpretation of the federal constitution, particularly focusing on the First Amendment's establishment clause. In other words, the government shall not found a state religion. They misinterpret that. Article 6's prohibition of religious tests for office.
Can I say something about that?
Yeah, go on.
They did that. If people would put some historical application of this, the religious test was for the sole purpose to avoid this practice that you had to belong to the Church of England during the colonial period. In order to hold office, you had to belong to the Church of England, which meant that you swore your loyalty to the king. If you did not belong to if you did not belong to the Church of England, you were not swearing your loyalty to the king. So they put this provision in the Constitution to ensure that even though that they were not going to have an official religion, but see, people get this mixed up. The Constitution, the religious test, was written in the Constitution in 1787. The First Amendment, the Bill of Rights, was not ratified until 1791. So people get this backwards. The religious test was put there first, then the Bill of Rights were added later, ratified 4 years later, but it was agreed that it doesn't matter. But what I'm saying is that the religious test was to prevent having another scenario where you had in England demanding that you have loyalty to the king and belonging to the Church of England.
Yeah, there were issues in the States, for instance, where, let's say, the Anglican Church was the official church of the state, where if you didn't belong to it, you could be arrested or you'd be discriminated against. So there were cases like that, and that's part of the reason that Jefferson and Washington took action as they did in terms of the constitutional wording to prevent that kind of problem.
And that was colonial America. That was right.
But that was a lesson they learned, which they applied forward.
Oh yeah, you look at the Bill of Rights itself. Previous lessons that the British did to the colonists they were ensured that it was never going to happen to our country, our citizens, ever again. That's why they put it in the Bill of Rights.
Yeah, guys, just I want to make a small plug and thank you, Little Low Main, for your tireless, loyal help. Thank you very much. For the members, I've made a comment in the community notes section. You can find it there. I've got a post. There's a link to a zip file. It's got 5 of my presentations there for you to download. And this particular slideshow, 99 of these slides, I'm on slide 92 right now. So there are 99 slides for $2.50 if you guys want to get hold of this and use it. Social media, your own education, polemics, apologetics, shared with your friends, etc. Please get a copy. That would really support the channel, support me. All right. So you've got the absence of explicit religious references in the main body of the Constitution, which they use as part of the argument, and the intentional contrast with under God, which was added to the Pledge of Allegiance in 1954. And we'll discuss that in the future, but that was because of what was called communism. So they wanted to remind Americans that, we are not communists. Those are the communists. We believe in God. So the godless communists. However, the argument that these people use basically just ignores the historical context in which the Constitution was written, as well as the other documents, the overwhelming religious character of state constitutions, the Declaration of Independence's references to creator and divine providence, the founder's own writings and statements about religion and Christian virtue. And don't forget, I spoke of Montesquieu's writings on the 3 different kinds of government, and a republic is based on virtue. The virtue is based on Christian religion. The founder's own writings and the fact that American freedom itself was conceived as a God-given right. So the disconnect stems from conflating separation of church and state, which was preventing an established state religion, with the broader Judeo-Christian philosophical framework that influenced American constitutional thought. And I covered that in some depth last week, where you saw Blackstone's formula or Blackstone's ratio, which is derived again from the Old Testament. And the state constitution's near universal acknowledgement of God demonstrates that the founders saw no contradiction between American governance, virtue, liberty, and the recognition of divine providence. So I'll end this here. So, guys, your thoughts. This is my talk for today.
I think this is. I think this case, what you presented today, is incredibly important, and I wish that across the United States and across the world, that those who teach social studies as a topic would actually, or history as a topic, would actually use some of this presentation. Now, I'm saying that as someone who taught social studies for too many years, and you know, I'm looking at it. What's sad that what's presented in here in many states is now forbidden to be taught in our schools.
That's upside down.
It is. It's, and I agree 100%. We need to have more civics taught to our kids in our country, the United States, than what we do already. But also, it also begins at the state levels. Because when this emperor becomes president on January 20th, one of his goals is to abolish the Department of Education. Well, the Department of Education has state. Yeah, I agree 100%. And they do that, and they control it by giving them back money that is already sent to Washington, D.C. It's completely bass-ackwards when we start talking about, you know, how power, you know, if you look at the Constitution, it establishes a principle called federalism, where power is shared. The federal government has certain powers to states, and they share power concurrently. And education, according to the 10th Amendment, does not belong to the federal government. It belongs to the state governments. And the state governments need to do their due diligence and start incorporating more language specific in the standards that are to be taught, that emphasize, maybe not even emphasize, but at least acknowledge and teach the Christian principles that our country was founded upon. And all of these shills, like you just mentioned, what was the guy's name? Barlow?
Joel Barlow.
Barlow guy is nothing but a scam artist trying to empower himself by preaching half truths. And that's what normally happens, is half truths are told about our countries, especially like Jefferson or Washington or whatever. So again, I agree 100% with Paul, and I appreciate you going over this in such detail, Lloyd. It's just absolutely phenomenal with the information that you got here. But this needs to be taught in our classrooms. And I, for one, I did teach much of this, but I had to do it and incorporated it into my classroom. And this is the sad part. When I had time to do it, meaning that you're given 118 standards that you have to teach during the course of the school year. One of those standards being, oh, by the way, the causes of the Revolutionary War. That's just one standard. How many different causes of the Revolutionary War were there? Oh, about 1 billion. But the fact is that the states are not giving the teachers or the school systems enough time to teach things like this. And by spelling them out in the standards. If they put them in the standards, they will be taught. If they're not in the standards, they just get glossed over.
Yeah, we have a time sequence things have to be taught in, and that prevents, as Eric is saying, it prevents you from going in depth in a lot of things, unfortunately.
Right. Well, look, if you guys, I mean, I'd be happy to share my slides with the two of you. You know, hopefully you can then do it on your own time, on your own channels, or in private when you do your sessions or training or teaching, you know, in your own time with students and so on. I mean, hopefully you'll benefit from it that way, because I think I'm trying to make a definitive series of slides. I'm trying to do a definitive series that really goes in depth, dismantles these arguments, and also shows the other side. And I mean, given that you guys are both well-educated Americans, I mean, I think you guys what I've heard is very positive feedback so far on what I've done.
Well done. I'm impressed. Thank you.
So am I, and I appreciate what you're doing. The amount of time that you've invested into getting all this information and spelling it out for everybody.
Yeah.
Not
So
even
guys-
an American. Big sake.
You're right. I'm not even American. I know. I'm a kind of a half-baked South African with a Dutch surname with, living in Poland. Yeah, but
And you know, have you
Yeah.
ever heard of the cliche Polish jokes?
yeah,
How unwarranted.
Yeah.
I don't know. I listen to Lloyd sometimes. I wonder.
yeah. So guys, let's call it a night here, and
Have a
I'll share
great
the
day.
slides with you. I'll send you a link to the slides. So hopefully you guys will use them for yourselves as well. For your own. I mean, I'd love people to use these slides, make screenshots, whatever. Please buy the slides. That would be great. Use them on social media. Use them on Facebook. Use them on X. Use them everywhere. Just post things, refute people's arguments, enlighten people with facts, and this is what I tried to do. So guys, we call it a night here. It's been great.
Oops, sorry.
What the?
I had somebody request to play the intro to the Cross and the Crescent.
I don't have that, but yeah. So guys, we'll call it a night, and thank you all very much. Been great having you on, and so yeah, guys, we can probably do this again next week. All right. So I'll wish you all a good night. Take care. God bless, guys.